Dear listeners and viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Spectra. I hope everybody's staying safe and applying the social distancing policy. You know, since the coronavirus epidemic, and then pandemic hit all parts of the world, people have been really concerned. People are trying to avoid all social gatherings. And most people now are working from home or studying from home. But on the other hand, not everybody is doing that because some people cannot afford to stay home. And these are the people who work in the front line and the emergency services. To name a few, the police, the paramedics, the firefighters, doctors, and many more. So what is the role of those people during these times of crisis? And what is the social role of all these different kinds of frontline workers? And to be more specific, what is the role of the police? And do we really have a right image about the police? To know more about this, I'm really delighted to be accompanied over the phone by Amy Boudreau, who is a police officer and a social activist. Amy?
Hello, thanks for having me, Mohammed.
It's a pleasure having you with us today. And Amy, like I said, you're a police officer, you're a social activist, but that's not all. You are a person who wears many hats and a person with versatile talents. So can you shed more light on who Amy Boudreau really is?
Sure, I'll start off with a little bit of background on my education, which will kind of explain maybe why I'm doing some of the stuff I'm doing. So I graduated from the University of Windsor with a bachelor's degree in sociology, and I have a minor in criminology and psychology. But I've been a police officer for the last 9 years, and I have a specialty in crime prevention. So once I became a police officer, I continued my education and I got a professional communication certificate over at the University of Toronto. I have my international crime prevention specialist designation, and I'm currently in a leadership certificate program at the University of Waterloo.
Wow.
One of my other passions that I have is health and wellness. So I've received my corporate yoga certification training as well as my trauma sensitive yoga certification. And what I do with that is I try to help others in developing self-care, self-compassion, self-belief, and optimism in an effort to help others learn how to maintain individual well-being and protective factors against burnout and psychological difficulties. Because as you know, working on the front line, you are exposed to many different scenarios. And, even though somebody might think, oh, well, that's what you kind of signed up for, when you go to these calls, you don't choose to hear and see some of the things that you go through. So that's why it's really important, I think, for the community to be aware of it, as well as the first responder community to do more for their self-care.
Yeah. Amy, let me just, because you talked about a lot of very, very interesting things here. And I think, most people have a specific stereotype about a police officer. And they think like they're the cops. They're the ones who will, you're busted if they got you. They're just there for crime prevention, for fighting, outlaws, and that's it basically. But you are a person with a background in sociology, in psychology, and communication, plus crime prevention. So crime prevention is not the one and only thing that you studied and your area of specialty. So I would like to ask you, what is a police officer? Is it only someone who would use force against an outlaw and just put him, in jail? Is that it? Or because this is the stereotype that most people have about a police officer.
Yeah, I would say, the enforcement side of things about policing are definitely necessary. it's a part of policing that is needed in order to make sure that people are complying with the laws. It aids in preserving the peace within the community, prevents crimes, assists victims, and it protects our community, people, and property. However, a really large part of what we do is actually community engagement, which is also a necessity component of policing. So true engagement is more than just having conversations with the public on the street. It's actually giving members of the public a voice in how their communities are being policed. So proactive engagement actually is the community joining partnership with police and forms different types of advisory groups, events, meetings, where they're actually functioning with the police to make sure that there's real collaboration and making decisions about how they want their community to be served.
Mm-hmm.
So, policing is more than just making arrests. It's, and we wear many hats, just like you said. Our role has really expanded over the years. We're not just a police officer anymore. We're also, a social worker, a healthcare provider, an emergency first responder, a peacekeeper, a counselor, investigator, somebody who advocates and is an ambassador for the community. We're leaders in the community. So, each officer encompasses all of that. And not everything that we do is, displayed on the news or out in the public. A lot of the stuff that we do, like volunteering.
And here comes my question, Amy. Like, do you think the media is doing you justice? Because a lot of people, especially new immigrants, whenever they see a police officer or a police car, they're really alarmed and they're afraid. They just look at the police officers as someone, that you should be afraid of, that like he's just enforcing the law, and that's it. So they don't see them as very, approachable people. Do you think it's a problem of media?
I think media does play a factor because, what bleeds leads in the media. Sometimes people want to show the really negative aspects of things within policing, or maybe there's a video or something that doesn't get the full picture, and then it's displayed, but you don't get the full story. I do think there are a lot of supporters that are out there, but I also think there's community members that if they see the uniform, then they think all officers are the same. And, there might be, just like any profession, there might be some people that don't do their job as well as others, which make it look bad for all the officers who are doing good and are trying to break barriers and build trust and respect within their communities. And one thing that we, even presenting in the schools or even just out in the public, so many people would say, wow, I can't believe how nice you guys are, and you're like the nicest cops I've ever met, and I never would have thought, or even if we're at an event, and sometimes, even parents will say to their kids, don't be bad, or the police are going to come and take you to jail. And we're like, please don't tell your kids that. What we want them to do is come to police if they get lost and they need help, know that they can come and that we are going to help them and that they are safe with us. So I think it's a responsibility for the whole community because it isn't just the police. Policing and keeping the community safe is a shared responsibility. If, someone sees something happening on the street, it's also it's their job as well to phone in if we see something. So, because as officers, we can't be there everywhere at once. We try to do our best, but we also need the community's help. They are the eyes and ears of what's going on, and that's why that partnership is so important, so that the community members can actually help in the fight to lower crime rates altogether with police.
And before we go deeper into, like talking about the social role of the police in specific, but the stereotype again that people have in their mind is that for you to become a police officer, you are just someone who must have like a very good physique, and you're someone who should be able to use weapons and whatnot. But you, for example, you have a background in sociology and psychology. So what are the requirements? Like, what are the backgrounds of people who work in the police force today?
Yeah, anyone can be a police officer. I mean, obviously you have to be qualified. You have to go through the same rigorous testing. But there isn't, and I've had people say this to me as well, is, oh, like, you're too nice, or you're too pretty, or you're too small to be a police officer. If I'm walking down the street, you wouldn't think that I'm a police officer. And even when people ask me what I do for work, and I tell them, they usually ask me twice. And then when I tell them the second time, they have to get me to clarify and say, okay, you mean like you're an actual officer on the road? And I'm like, yeah, because, like, what does an officer look like, right? There isn't one particular type of person. These organizations need to hire people of all walks of life, different ages, backgrounds, economic status, anything that, that challenges that they've gone through that can relate to the community. It doesn't have to be specific education or anything. Obviously you need post-secondary education, but what we're looking for is people that reflect our community. It's really important that there's people on the ground who can provide that type of service. And, we're looking for problem solvers, critical thinkers, people who have emotional intelligence, people that can hold a conversation and have interpersonal skills. And a majority of what we do, is problem solving and de-escalating situations and engaging positively. There's a very small percentage of, having to use force ever, and we don't want to. It's, in some certain cases we have to, based on, what's happening and to keep people safe. But the majority of what we do is a lot of other things that I had mentioned.
Yeah, and of course, Canada is a very multicultural, multiracial society. People are coming from all four corners of the globe, and it's a canvas, it's a mosaic of different backgrounds. So, to what extent is this multicultural aspect reflected in the police force today? Is it up to your expectations? Do you think something else should be done about it?
I think a lot of police services are valuing equity and inclusion and the importance of our police force having to be reflective of the community. So they are taking strides in order to improve that. Okay. Again, we still have to hire qualified people. The idea too is, like you said, if there's people who are out there who have these generalizations or stereotypes about what officers do or who they are, then maybe that's not of interest to some people. Maybe they're just not applying because they don't see themselves in a role as a police officer. So you kind of have to look and understand, well, why is that, right? Maybe there's women even out there that don't want to apply to be a police officer because, like you said, they think they have to be just as tough and aggressive as men, but that's not the case.
And this is another big topic, of course, women's role in the police. But again, do you see any kind of cultural background that are usually reluctant to join the police force?
I think it depends. Like, everybody is an individual, and their families are individual. From one culture to the next. So. Some families might not be as supportive, maybe, or background, whatever cultures they are, might have a different opinion about the police. Again, even if, let's say, people have emigrated to Canada, or relatives have, or their grandparents, and sometimes people might have a different idea of what police are about, maybe from their home country. But for some people, it might not be of interest, even if they're born here in Canada. So I think it really depends on the individual and the family and offering support. Because I think, a lot of people do value their support of their family. So if you don't have, the support of your family, then maybe you're going to think twice about entering a profession.
Of course, yeah, definitely.
That might pose risks or challenges over time.
There is stigma involved as well, unfortunately. So we'll be going on a short break now, but after we come from the break, we'll be discussing the role of women and how do people see a police woman as a police officer. So Amel, just ask you to stay with us. We'll be going on a short break and we'll be coming back. Dear listeners and viewers, please stay with us.
هل تريد بيع، شراء أو استئجار عقار سكني أو تجاري؟ هل تبحث عن خدمات عقارية في تورونتو، ميسيساغا أو أي من المدن القريبة؟ والآن وكيلة العقارات سهير البشير تقدم لكم خدماتها المميزة مع مصداقية مشهودة في التعامل. كل ما عليك فعله هو الاتصال على الرقم 647-993-1967 أو عبر موقعنا على الإنترنت suhairalbashir.ca. سهير البشير لخدماتك العقارية.
من كل البلدان ومن كل اللهجات العربية جمعنا لكم الأغاني حتى يكون راديو عربز اف ام صوت لكل الجالية العربية بأمريكا وكندا. خليكم معنا سوا على الهوا.
مستشارة الهجرة شيرين بسيسو تقدم خدماتها لجاليتنا العربية في أونتاريو: قضايا اللجوء، فيزا السياحة، فيزا الطلاب، لم الشمل، هجرة أصحاب الشهادات، الكفالة الخماسية، وطلبات الجنسية وتجديد الإقامة. مستشارة الهجرة شيرين بسيسو 416-839-9901 416-839-9901.
صوت العرب بالحب بيناديكم من أمريكا وكندا يجيكم. صوت العرب Arabs FM.
Dear listeners and viewers, we're back again with Officer Amy Boudreau. And before the break, I was asking her about the role of women and the stereotypes. So what was your experience being a woman and a police officer, like inside the police force itself and on the street?
Yeah, I mean, I've had different people approach me before, actually while in uniform, and I've actually had people ask me, are you a real cop? What's that supposed to mean? Yeah, this is, a real uniform, and this is a gun, and this is what I'm a police officer. But again, there's that idea of, if you're a woman or you're petite or you don't, what does an officer look like? Mm-hmm. Again, for some people, maybe they just haven't seen very many women within the police force. So, it's uncommon that maybe they see that, even though women have been in police for over 100 years. In Canada, we've been sitting at about 20% of women representation in policing. So, and that hasn't really changed in the last about 15 years. So, what is that telling us? Again, are women not applying because they think maybe the job is going to be challenging, or if they're not sure if they can, is that a career that they've thought about before? So I have had experiences, again, even people asking me, who do I work for? Or sorry, again, like what does an officer look like? And again, there's all these different roles that we play, and women actually bring a lot of value to police organizations. Again, it's not the idea anymore of brute force, and yeah, there's use of force that you might have to use in your career, but you're trained on that, and you have different use of force options on your duty belt. So, you're not going to be, if you have to get into a fight, then yeah, you have to get into a fight, but you also have these other tools, and you have backup, and you have training, and you have de-escalation techniques and all these other things. So, a lot of times, women have, within policing organizations, we have added creativity to problem solving. There are studies that show that we're less likely to be named in a complaint, more likely to use de-escalation techniques to reduce use of force, like having to use it or get into a fight. They're also really good at peaceful police citizen relationship. And also too, sometimes there's victims of crime who would prefer a particular gender. So if there's, let's say, domestic situation, and there's a woman who would rather a female officer, then, we can relate with them a little bit more, or if that makes them feel more ease.
And before going more into that, I just want to ask you here, growing up as a child, did you always want to become a police officer? And how did you think, what did you think of police officers as a child, as a little girl?
I remember when I was in grade school, there was an officer that came and spoke to our class. And I remember having the idea of I feel like that's something I could do even at a really young age. Especially, it still is a very male-dominated profession today, but even more so back then. And I always had the attitude if someone said, "Oh, you can't do something," then I'm like, "Oh, watch me do it," kind of thing. So, I was kind of on the fence back and forth when I was in university whether I really wanted to do that. And I decided that it was a career that would be really great for me because it fit my personality. I've always been involved. It's been a lifestyle for me to be really involved in the community, even at a really young age. I've always joined volunteering committees, anything to do with the community, and I've always wanted to help people. And I feel as an officer, you have that capacity to empower other people and to help them. So using that role for more social, for the social greater good, not just, I'm going into work, punching in a card, punching out, I'm going home. A lot of people who get into policing care about other human beings and serving humanity. So that's one of the reasons why I got into it.
And what did your family think about it? When you were growing up and then you told them I would like to become a police officer. Were there any concerns?
I feel like any family is going to have some concerns because of the inherent risks, the potential risks. But just to give you a little bit of background about my growing up, so my parents are divorced. I've never known my father. I grew up in a single parent home where my mom took care of my sister and I have an older sister. And I watched her struggle financially to support two kids. And then I moved out on my own when I was 18 and supported myself, going to school full time, working like 3 jobs. So I think because of those adversities as well, I really had to build my mindset up about creating the life that I wanted, not succumbing to the circumstances that I was born into. So I focused on my education, my attitude, and my mindset, so that if I wanted to do something and I wanted to accomplish something, then I would just do it. I didn't let my circumstances or my gender or anything else dictate, who I was going to be or what my capabilities were. Yeah. So I just kind of focused on that. And my mom was really supportive with making sure that, we had perseverance and we could overcome, difficulties that were coming our way. And she was, she kind of taught us how to be strong. And I think because of those experiences in early life, it allowed me to build the mindset to do this type of job as well. And I guess that's my personal experience. It might not be the same for other people, but my family's always been supportive that way. Although I have had older, more like old school thinking relatives who weren't so sure about, are you sure this is what you want to do? Like, are you sure you don't want to be a teacher? And, oh, you still want to do that, do you? So I feel like they would still question me on, like, why do you want to be a police officer, and shouldn't, do you want to do something else?
Because actually there's another side to it. While some people think that you might not be tough enough to become a police officer, other people will say that if you are a police officer, you're no longer feminine. Like, how can you become like maybe a wife or mother, whatnot? Like you're not a complete woman anymore. So what do you say to those people?
Yeah, no, I don't think so at all, because, just because you're a police officer doesn't mean you're fully masculine. You know what I mean? So like every single person, every individual has both masculine and feminine traits. So just because you get into a profession that's male dominated does not mean that you lose your femininity. I still dress up. I still, and again, everybody has both masculine and feminine qualities, but it doesn't make you more or less of the other. And one's not better or worse. They're just different, different traits and different qualities. So, and again, you can still do this job without having to, try to be more tough or try to be, do you have to be assertive in certain circumstances? Absolutely.
Okay.
But it doesn't change your character of your personality or who you are.
And speaking of being assertive here, that's a very important point. Do you think like female police officers sometimes get bullied?
What do you mean?
Because like it's a male dominated job. And
you mean like within society or within the organization?
Within both, actually.
So I don't think women get bullied. I think there's still, I think within society, because the way people view masculine and feminine traits, some people might think that masculine qualities are more superior or they're better than female or feminine styles of or traits. Because historically, women or feminine styles of thinking were deemed, irrational, or they were seen as weak or inferior. And men's were more esteemed as superior than the femininity styles of, leadership or thinking and stuff like that. So I think that there are still profound roots in us as a society of how we view masculine and femininity. So, I don't think there's always room for improvement that way. And I think that's why it's important to keep having these conversations and have these discussions so that people can recognize maybe some of their own internal biases that they maybe have, which sometimes they don't even realize, because there's these gender roles that we're in, right? Like when you're growing up, you're taught certain things, even from before the age of 5 years old. There's children who are, they know the difference between, masculine and feminine or other types of qualities or whatever gender that, there's these gender roles these boxes that society puts us in. And, what we're finding now, even with some of the more younger generation, is people don't necessarily relate to just, male or female. There's all these other genders that maybe that they identify with. And society is becoming more accepting of that. I do think that there's still some old ways of thinking in relation to gender roles and gender.
Because, not only police officers, like, doctors or people who work in paramedics or whatnot, they would all think like you're working around the clock 24/7, and you have shifts. You can, people can call you at any time. So how can you become a mother or a wife? Like, how can you take care of your kids and whatnot? This is what a lot of people would think.
Well, I mean, someone could say the same thing for nurses. They have the same schedule.
Exactly.
They work 24 hours. Like, nurses, doctors, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, anyone who works those types of schedules, whether you're, male or female, you make it work with whatever your family dynamics are. So it's not necessarily.
It's unfortunately, we still have some people thinking this way, which is extremely unfortunate again, but it is a fact that some people still think that man, like his, like he's the provider, and so he's supposed to go out there and work, but the woman like just complements or like the role of the man. But like her major role is to take care of the kids and whatnot.
Well, I mean, and I think some families even, there might be some women who want that too, and there's nothing wrong with that as well. Like everybody has to, there isn't one type of success. It isn't like if you do this, then you're successful, or you do that, you're. It's whatever works for each family and each individual. And I think that if one person in the family has maybe more strict schedule. If the other person has a more flexible schedule, then that works for everybody. So depending on if it's the male, if it's the man or woman or whoever's in the relationship, gender-wise, then if that works for them, again, it's each family. It's, and it's whatever works for that couple too, right?
And a family is a shared responsibility, it's in everything. It's a shared responsibility in everything. So there should be a lot of cooperation between.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of officers, like even women officers who are mothers and who are married and who are a police officer. And, some of them are married to other officers and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're married to, they have other types of careers, their husbands or wives, and they make it work. So, and it doesn't mean that if, let's say there's I'm a woman officer, and because I'm a police officer, it doesn't mean that I'm the dominant, or you know what I mean? Like I'm masculine in my relationship. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that that's my profession.
Exactly. So like there's the professional side and there's the personal side, and they don't have to affect one another. Like these are two different paradigms or two different systems.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. So we're going on a second break now. Please stay with us, and we'll be back in a minute. Dear listeners and viewers, stay tuned, please.
ستار أوتو جلاس، الشركة الأكثر نجاحاً وشهرة لتصليح وتغيير زجاج السيارات بكافة أنواعها. ستار أوتو جلاس، الشركة الأكثر تميزاً بسرعة تقديم الخدمة لزبائنها وبأسعار مغرية جداً. ستار أوتو جلاس تقدم خصم بأسعارها 15% لمستمعي راديو العرب في أمريكا وكندا. ستار أوتو جلاس 4267 ويست رود تورونتو، قرب ستيلز أفنيو، 416-744-2700 416-744-2700.
إذاعة أرابز FM هي صوت لكل جاليتنا العربية بأمريكا وكندا، وهالصوت بيوصل لكل مكان بالعالم فيه إنترنت. فخلوكم معنا على أرابز FM.
صوت العرب الحب يناديكم من أمريكا وكندا يجيكم. صوت العرب Arabs FM.
You're listening to Arabs FM, radio of the Arabs in the US and Canada. Live 24/7 at our website, arabsfm.com.
Arabs FM.
بدعم مباشر من الحكومة الكندية، Center for Education and Training يقدم قروض مالية سهلة التسديد تصل قيمتها إلى $15,000 كندي للراغبين بالحصول على تراخيص مزاولة العمل وشهادات المهنة. Center of Education and Training يقدم القروض للمقيمين بتورونتو، ميسيساغا، برامبتون، أوكفيل، هاملتون والمدن القريبة من المهاجرين واللاجئين الذين لديهم PR، وأيضا لحاملي الجنسية الكندية الذين لديهم شهادات عليا من خارج كندا لمزاولة اختصاصهم أو اختصاص جديد. للمزيد من المعلومات يرجى التواصل مع السيدة رويدة الكبيسي 647-394-5978. رويدة الكبيسي 647-394-5978.
We're back once more, and we're still with Officer Amy Boudreau. And before the break, we were talking about the different stereotypes and, unfortunately, some bigotry that people might have. But now let's talk about the social role of the police. And you are someone with a background in sociology and psychology and whatnot. A very important thing that the police does is to outreach. How do you see this service? Like, is the outreach enough? Does the police need to do some more outreaching?
I think it's, again, like I was mentioning earlier, policing is a lifestyle, and, we're so ingrained within the community that we often spend a lot of our volunteer time, personal time, doing other types of projects or working with other organizations within the community to help elevate our community in whatever way that they need. So some of the things that I actually do on the side, along with working full time, is I'm an executive board member for the International Society of Crime Prevention Practitioners. Mm-hmm. I'm also a community liaison for the Canadian Society of Evidence-Based Policing. I work with the Advancing We in Policing, which is referred to AWIP committee member. So we're an Ontario working group trying to advance advance equality and inclusion as it relates to gender within policing. And then I'm also part of the First Responder Mindfulness Network, which is run by the Ministry of Solicitor General, Corporate Healthcare and Wellness Branch, in order to try to use mindfulness modalities to bring into our respective industries to help improve well-being of first responders.
Yeah, well, these are all great responsibilities here. But let me ask you again, what is the percentage of women involved in these different organizations?
You mean the ones that I'm specifically in?
Yes. So you said there's about 20% of police officers who are women. Is that correct?
Across Canada, yeah, we've been sitting at about 20% of women representation across Canada in a variety of different police services. So that's where we stand nationally.
And and the other services that you're involved in as well. You're involved in many different kinds of social services too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to get involved within the community and to advocate for things that you believe in. Like I mentioned, being a part of the Advancing We in Policing, what we're trying to do is, and this isn't just women. This is a group of men and women, and it's open for all genders. So what we're trying to do is create more equity and inclusion. So like I had mentioned, there's always room for improvement, and even within our industry across Canada, there's more improvements by looking at, let's say, policies or hiring practices or promotional reviews, looking at it systematically and seeing if there's anything that we can improve to minimize barriers for, again, women or other diverse groups to enter into policing and or go through the like lateral transfers in different parts of policing. So we have been creating workshops together, officers from across the province of Ontario, to collect statistical data. And with that data, we want to put a research proposal, just sharing some of our findings to the Ontario Chiefs of Police, so that chiefs have a document that they can help them look at and just kind of see where maybe they can make improvements within their own organizations. So I think, it's important to, again, get involved and, not even just within the community, but, other groups that help policing as an industry to make some of these changes.
And the auxiliary police force, like, can you shed some light on this? What is auxiliary police?
Yeah, so the auxiliary officers, so it's a volunteer program. You would go through the hiring process and training, not the same as like you would as a cadet or an officer, but it's they do like a full background, and if you get hired, you will be assisting police officers at just different events, crowd control, go on ride-alongs. Sometimes it's a stepping stone. It's an entry point for people who are considering maybe entering policing, but not sure if this is exactly what they want to do, or maybe they want to do the auxiliary program first. Maybe if they're still in school, or if they're working, or if they have families and they just want, they still want to assist police, but maybe don't have all the time that they want to devote.
People from all walks of life, right? Like all different
all walks of
genders,
life. Absolutely, different backgrounds, different experiences, different education and skill set levels. And some people like to add it to their resumes as well. Sometimes people just want to help their community out or help police out. So they work full time and then they do this on the side. So it's a great way to meet your community members out at events. It's great to know your law enforcement officers a little bit better and create those partnerships.
And is there a higher percentage of women involved in the auxiliary police than the regular force?
I don't know what the percentage is. I've worked with both men and women within the auxiliary. And again, I think based on the needs and like the area or people who are just interested, it's probably going to change from one police service to the next. But I'm not sure what the percentage ratio is for that.
And how about the cadets?
The cadet program, it's usually I would say 18 years old to early 20s when people are interested in this program. So it's not, you get paid, it's a job, you get hired, you work in different units within policing. You don't get a gun, however, you don't get your full use of force kit, but you get trained just the same. So when you would get hired with, let's say, a group of police officers, once the officers, so they have training, pre-training before they go down to the Ontario Police College. So the cadets would train with them, and then when the officers would leave to go down to the Ontario Police College, the cadets would have their own training in-house at whatever their police service is. And then they would move to their respective areas. So
and are seeing more girls interested in joining the cadets now?
Again, it's a mix of both men and women. Again, sometimes if some women want to join auxiliary or the cadet program to see if policing is something that would be for them, then those are great options. The cadet usually program, you would be in it for at least 2 or 3 years, and then you would apply to be a police officer, and you can kind of move through the ranks that way.
And people do not have to work with like criminals, basically. There are a lot of social services, lots of help to people in need, right?
Yeah, I mean, the police work in partnership with all sorts of different organizations. And the one thing that I really like about policing, and, you know, if somebody wants to become an officer, then yeah, you start on the road and you have to build the basic knowledge and experience within policing before you can start moving into other units. But what I like about policing is it's a career within a career. So every couple of years, you have the ability to work in all these other units, and it's not always just frontline. You can be an investigator, you can work in organizational wellness, corporate learning. There's all these different types of units that, because it's still an organization, it needs to function. So we have all these moving parts, and each of them are very important for the whole organization to be successful. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth and for movement within this career.
Definitely. And let's go for a last break. And after the break, I would like to know from you, like, the role of the police now with the coronavirus pandemic. So please stay with us.
Sounding their sirens and flashing their lights, just doing their job, yeah, they're doing it right. What does he do on patrol? Well, he's on the lookout for trouble, so listens close to the calls on his radio and checks the data on his terminal. Oh, these cars aren't hard to identify with their lights, their gear and marks on every side. But when he is unmarked, well, he just might hide. That is until he turns on his lights. You hear them singing, just doing their job on the streets day and night. Police trucks and cruisers and fast motorbikes, sounding their sirens and flashing their lights, just doing their job, yeah, they're doing it right. Look, here's a police SUV. Oh, her size gives her more functionality. She can load up more gear, leaving nothing behind. Has plenty of room for the special K9 when she's asked to take a call off-road. Oh, she's got all the clearance to go, Oh, she's brave and she's strong and professional. There aren't many places she can't easily go. She goes on singing, just doing their job on the streets day and night. Police trucks and cruisers and fast motorbikes, sounding their sirens and flashing their lights, just doing their...
She's brave, strong, and professional. A police officer, a police woman. And last but not least, what is the role of the police in this pandemic and in general times of problems and crises?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, there's people that are out there working front lines, like officers who don't have the ability to stay home. We're seen as an essential service, and that's our job. We have to make sure that the public is protected and they're safe. So it's still business as usual for us. Obviously we're taking precautions with keeping our social distancing and practicing the same hygiene, not touching our face, and trying to be mindful of reducing calls for service, to make sure that, we're not being overwhelmed on the road. And that's why it's really important for, I think, a lot of people to take their responsibility and stay home, be safe, and reduce the risk for all the frontline officers that are out there, emergency services, doctors, nurses. But yeah, we have our job to do, and at the end of the day, we're human beings as well, and we have, policing is one part of who we are. It's not the only thing that we are. We have family members as well. We're, mothers, sisters, husbands, wives, and we have other interests as well. So we want to make sure that we're coming home at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, and are there any special measures or like precautions that are being taken during these times of crisis or, problems? Because police general, they always work. They are like it's emergency service, but in case there is a situation like the corona pandemic now, are there any extra things that the police would do?
I mean, it's still business as usual. Like there's still a lot of pedestrians that are out, walking, trying to get fresh air. So we have to make sure that our roads are safe. We have to make sure that, we're protecting businesses that are maybe not open, and make sure that they're safe and not being broken into. So we're going to be doing our general patrol. And if there's calls for service, we're going to be taking those as well, priority 1s and 2s. Mm-hmm. If there are other calls for service that are 3s and 4s, some police services across the Greater Toronto area are doing call diversion. If there's things that we can take care of over the telephone, then we're doing that. We also have online reporting systems. Each police service will have a website. So depending on where you are, you can visit the website to get prevention information, as well as there's an online reporting if you need police. And it's really important for the community too to watch out for each other as well. If they do see a crime or see something in progress, that they are still reporting it and having police attend to do an investigation, because Definitely. We want to make sure that times are still tough for people right now, especially with financially with their businesses, or some people having to stay home. So the last thing that you want is to have a crime happen now, maybe let's say at your business, and that can also affect you financially, right? So make sure that you're watching, over each other and your neighbors, and making sure that you're reporting things if you see them as well. And
there have been some alarming videos that really have went viral of police officers from different countries dealing in a very, very brutal way with the citizens because of the coronavirus pandemic, because they're trying to enforce social distancing, but in a very, very brutal way. Would anything like that happen in Canada?
No, I mean, everybody has their part to stay home and to be safe. Here in Canada, we don't threaten, and we don't use excessive force. We're noticing too that calls for service are not as high because of the for the call diversion and stuff. So I think a lot of people are doing their part. Every country is going to be a little bit different on their laws and how they handle things. We as officers abide by Canadian laws. I know that even the jail cells right now, or like our jails, they're going to have to make decisions with even some inmates that may have coronavirus. And we got our court systems that are closed down right now. So a lot of the places are closed down and on lockdown so that people can stay home and isolate. So make sure that you're doing that and you're being responsible. I know laws have, it's been mandatory now if you're traveling, that you're self-isolating for the 14 days. I know that a lot of some of the different places that are supposed to be closed and not operating, I know the different health units are going around to make sure that they're checking. So as of right now, we take direction by the federal laws. If we'll have to see in the coming days if anything changes that way. And I know even places like Quebec will have military. I think they had military coming in they're calling a state of emergency, because if you lose too many first responders, or even our healthcare system, if it's overburdened, then that's not good for community, right? So we're not at that stage yet. We're hoping that everybody can still do their part, and it's unfortunate. There's some people that are out there that were pulling down signs down at some of the Toronto parks and stuff, and it's these regulations are not being put in place to inconvenience you. They're for your safety and to protect everybody. So try to stay home the best you can. If you have to go get groceries or other essentials, then do that. But the more that you stay home, the less likely that you can contract the virus and or spread it. And the idea of flattening the curve right now is to make sure that we're not overburdening the systems or the people who are out there who have to continue working out on the front lines, right?
Definitely. And, you know, at the very end, I mean, like if there's any woman or any young girl who's watching us now, and any special advice you want to give to them, like if they're thinking about working in the police, and you are a great role model really for, because
Oh, thank you.
no, that's the reality, because you are a very active police officer, but that's not all. You're also very active in many other areas, and you do a lot of social services for the community by and large. So, what is there any message you'd like to give to any young girl or woman who are watching you now?
Yeah, I would just say do your best at everything that you strive to accomplish. It'll give you a sense of pride, and it creates quality leadership within the community. Try to break gender inequalities through your personal achievements. So it's about, you're not competing with anybody else in this world except for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So push yourself, have your own, internal rewards when you reach your goal, and keep working towards things that you care about. Push the status quo. Don't be invisible or second choice. Always speak up, because your voice matters. You'll never know, the effect that you have just as one person. Don't ever underestimate the power that you have to affect change in the world.
Definitely.
Don't lose yourself. Yeah, don't lose yourself, I would say, as you just move into different roles into your life. So whether you're, a mother or a wife or a daughter, a student, or whatever your career choice is, it's a part of who you are, but it doesn't always just define you, and that's not just your only role.
And what matters at the end of the day is what's within, really. Like, the facade might be different, male or female, or like any other gender, but
I agree. And I think it's really important too to practice self-love and self-care, and that you have positive self-talk, because excuse me, even when I was being hired as a police officer, or other things I wanted to do in my life, there's always a lot of people who have a lot to say, or they have an opinion about what you should be doing with your life. But you have to make a decision of, what's important to you, and are you living your truth? Are you, doing it for someone else, or is it something that you truly care about? Okay. And I don't regret, and I've lived my life that way, and I don't regret any of it, because it's given me the skill set and knowledge to get where I need to be, like in my life. And so just be confident.
That's perfect. Yeah. And like you said, like all dear listeners and viewers, really, like, the police force is part of the society, and it should reflect everyone, and all kinds of people are needed. All kinds of, genders are needed. All kinds of professional backgrounds are needed. Because the police force is there, it's from you, and it's for you as well. So
I agree. And just to touch on that point quickly, I know we've been talking a lot about diversity, and I think some people think it's referred to as visible minorities, which it's not. When you look at people, you have to look at all dimensions. So I really like the example that the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion gives. There's 5 different dimensions of diversity. And the first one is your personality. The second one is just internal dimension. So that could be your sexual orientation, mental, physical ability, whether you're an introvert, you're extrovert, your place of origin, the way that you think, your race, ethnicity, those types of things, your gender. The third one is your external dimension. So if you're a caregiver and you have responsibilities, whatever your recreational habits are, your religion, your beliefs, your work experience, your language, your accent, educational background, all those types of things. will be included.
Absolutely. Officer,
And then
please go ahead.
sorry. And then the fourth dimension is your title, seniority, like wherever you work, if you're affiliated to any association, or business units, any of those types of things. And then the last one is your political systems, your cultural events, economic systems, and those types of things. So all of those things will make up your diversity. And just remember, for each diverse group, you're still going to have diversity within each individual. So that's what we refer to is having diverse people at the table.
That's absolutely great. And Officer Amy Boudreau, thank you very much for being with us tonight. You gave us a lot of insight, really, and I hope everybody will benefit from role models like yourself here. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. All the best. And dear listeners and viewers, with the COVID-19, with the pandemic spreading everywhere in the world now, we would like to give more space to news coverage. Everybody's more concerned today with the latest news. So I think it's time for us to take a step back and give more space to news and live coverage of what's happening in the street. So we will be having a halt or a stop of our program Spectra, or the Arabic version of it, Atiaf, as well. And hopefully we'll be seeing you again, but hopefully everybody will stay safe. And until we meet again, I wish you all the best. Thank you and have a good night.